Welcome to Salute Your Sports Week 54. I'm Kamen Enchev. I've got Tom Castleman, Drew Brackett here with me. Guys, we've got a big show today, a wild Monday Night Football game last night, some teams making big-time statements this last week in the NFL. We'll talk about that. Some college football as well. We'll have all sorts of sports today, a lot of good stuff on the program. I am certainly looking forward to today's show.
Absolutely. And lo and behold, the NBA season is upon us. It's been a little bit of time since we talked some round ball rock. Looking forward to that today. Going to be a really fun show.
Absolutely. And we'll start with the NFL guys. The biggest statement win. Who do you give it to? The Cardinals had a huge win. The Ravens and then the Titans did last night on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, the Titans made me edit the rundown. I originally was going to debate Cardinals, Ravens, but I thought Tennessee's win last night was really big given how Buffalo had the most points scored, the most points, least points allowed. Really a statement win for the Titans. But for me, I'm going to knock the Titans off this list. I would say it's not the biggest win just because the Titans did it with Derrick Henry. He was a beast, 143 rush yards, 3 touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill didn't play particularly well. Their defense didn't play particularly well. This was the case of a superstar, one of the top 5 players in the NFL dominating. Every once in a while, your superstar is going to play like a superstar and you'll win a game. I think Tennessee's problems are still there. Their defense is still horrendous. And I think their passing game hasn't looked as good as people would have thought. A.J. Brown is a fantasy owner of his. I know he's not playing as well as he could be. Julio Jones hasn't been the same player. So Tennessee had a huge win. It's a nice win for them. But really, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't change that many things because we know Tennessee's going to win the AFC South. And I don't think they'll consistently be able to put together wins against these teams come playoff time. They were at home also. To me, the other 2 games were both statement wins. I think the Cardinals win was big time. They won 37-14 without Cliff Kingsbury, their head coach. Complete team performance. The defense played well. I know Nick Chubb wasn't there, but Kareem Hunt is just as good, if not better. They limited him a little bit. They completely limited the passing game. 4 passing touchdowns for Kyler Murray. Also over 100 rushing yards as a team, over 200 passing yards as a team. They did it all in that game. But I think it's still not as big as the Ravens win. Just because the Browns... Baker Mayfield's playing hurt right now. Baker Mayfield's not playing great. Nick Chubb wasn't there. I don't even know how the Browns were 3.5-point favorites in that game to begin with. I mean, they're a 3-3 football team. I know they're better than that record, but still, it was a 5-0 team beating a 3-2 team. The Ravens and Chargers both went in 4-1 into that game. The Chargers already beat the Chiefs. They beat the Browns. They beat the Raiders. Their only loss was a really close loss against what has turned out to be a great Cowboys team. What impressed me most about Baltimore's 34-6 win was that they held the Chargers, who are coming off a 47-point game, to just 6 points. Their pass defense had struggled. Justin Herbert was throwing great coming into the game. They barely got over 200 total yards. And Lamar Jackson, he started to win me over. Lamar Jackson has played amazing this season. Did not play good at all this game. 218 total yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. The Ravens got it done with their offensive line, their defense. I mean, Latavius Murray, Javonte Freeman, Le'Veon Bell, all these running backs were seemingly washed up, all of a sudden looking like they're young again. And that's because that offensive line is doing work in Baltimore. So the Ravens definitely the statement win of the weekend for me.
Absolutely. I think Ravens probably had the most, perhaps paradigm-shifting victory of all the teams, given that they were a pretty much fully healthy team, at least fully healthy from where they started this season. Of course, they had many injuries in the preseason, going up against an LA Chargers team that was also pretty healthy for the most part. The Cardinals going up against the Browns team where you said Nick Chubb was out, Kareem Hunt leaves with a calf injury, Baker Mayfield's been playing with a separated left shoulder. Granted, it's not his throwing shoulder, but I still cannot imagine that that's particularly fun or easy to play with. So I think that the Cardinals, while it's a good win, certainly not any sort of shifting narrative. I think I will give a little bit more of a credit to the Titans, though. as a close second to the Ravens in terms of like the biggest statement win of the week, just because they came into this showdown with the Buffalo Bills with the narrative of they're going to win the AFC South, because the three other teams don't really seem like they want to win anything out of the AFC South. The Titans go in and, yeah, their superstar plays like a superstar, but that's what it takes to win in the NFL. Just because he's a running back instead of a quarterback, I don't think that really changes from like a game planning, giving credit to somebody type of credence. Derrick Henry went out there, took some big hits, delivered some big hits. I don't think it's too terribly different from, Josh Allen, for example, dominating a game and playing really well for the most part. Just an unfortunate slip on that 4th and goal to go, or 4th and 1 to go, right at the end of the game.
If he doesn't slip, Buffalo wins that game. Simple as that.
Good chance, yeah, very good chance. So that's why Tennessee, like they showed that at the very least they played an elite team close, and in this case happened to come out with the win. So I think they definitely made a statement as well. But I think Ravens had the biggest win of the week.
Yeah, I agreed. I think the Ravens, with that huge win over the Chargers on Sunday, was definitely the biggest win of the week in the NFL.
Yeah, a couple of quick follow-ups to that. First off, the Bills and Titans, or the Bills rather, especially, didn't get the memo that I had a 6-way parlay, $25, 175 to win. I hit the first 5 legs. I had Buffalo minus 2.5 in the first half. That barely hits. I had over 53.5 points. I had over Allen 250 yards passing. It was like a lowered number compared to what the original one is at. Henry, over Henry's rush yards total. He got that in one run, I think. And then I had, what else? I had one other one maybe. I hit 5 of them. I needed Buffalo minus 6, and they did not deliver. When they went up 7, after that 2-point conversion, I thought I had it. But I'll ask you guys this other question, though. So, I mean, this is sort of a follow-up. I didn't have this in the rundowns, but since we're all sort of on the same page, do we think the Ravens are now the team to beat in the AFC, or is it just too hard to tell? Because, I mean, everyone was all aboard Buffalo except for maybe Tom Castleman. And now it's like, are we easing off Buffalo, giving the Ravens some hype? Or is this really one of those cases where it's like any given Sunday in the NFL?
It's any given Sunday. I mean, we saw the Chargers play out of their minds for, the first 5 games of the season and lay a complete and total egg against the Ravens. I mean, it's not as if the Ravens defense, as you talked about last week, Haman, it's not as if their defense is a particularly strong defense, especially against the pass. And we have Justin Herbert, who is a phenomenal young quarterback, struggling in a game. So I don't really know. It just kind of comes down to, who's healthiest, who's just on a roll, who has, perhaps the better game plan or just the better execution on a week-to-week basis. I think, LA, Baltimore, Buffalo. I mean, if you want to throw in Kansas City, maybe even Tennessee, these are just kind of like, these are the top glom of teams that we all kind of figured on a little bit coming into the season. Maybe not necessarily the Chargers, but these are the teams that we kind of looked at as they're going to be right at the top. I think right now we're just watching kind of like a heavyweight bout. We're just watching some of the best teams play the best teams. Baltimore got LA in this game. They might be meeting up later in the year, and LA might be able to get them back. It's going to be fun to watch, though.
Absolutely.
Welcome, and I know the bandwagon for the Ravens wide open, so you're welcome to join because the Chiefs are not good.
I'm getting close to jumping on that Baltimore bandwagon, but I'm not quite there. I kind of agree with what Tom said. I think, it's incredible how much parity there is in the NFL. I think no person realistically, obviously, like if you're an analyst, you're making a pick, you got to sound smart. But realistically speaking, in either conference, I don't think there's one team that clearly stands above the rest. The Cardinals might be the one, but we'll see. We'll see. Let's wait a little more on the Cardinals. I think. In the NFC, we've got 4 teams that are 5-1, one that is 6-0. In the AFC, we've got the Ravens are 5-1. We've got the Chargers are 4-2. Bills are 4-2. Chiefs are 3-3. It's so wide open. I think all of these teams have weaknesses. I don't think any team is necessarily perfect. The Bills were playing perfect, but Tom, you brought this up. They still don't have a great running game, and their defense, I think. Their defense was overachieving. And part of it is they played some really bad teams. They played the Texans, they played Washington, they played Miami. I mean, it's easy to look good when you're playing some of the weakest competition. Against the Chiefs, yes, they were very good, but they still, they gave up 20 points. They gave up a lot of yards. It was raining. There was a few plays where a couple plays here, a couple plays there, the Chiefs they're scoring 30 in that game. So, I mean, when they played the Titans and Chiefs, they gave up like 50-something points in those two games. So no one is perfect. I think every team has some things to work on, and I'm looking forward to it. And this will be a good chance to transition into parity. What about the other conference, the NFC? A lot of parity there too, Mr. Brackett.
Yeah, gotta love the boys. I mean, the boys are kind of, they're 5-1, and I think they're probably the top team. The Packers are getting a couple guys back, and of course, the Bucks are the Bucks, defending champs. So I'm gonna have to go with Cowboys.
The Cowboys, you think, are the team to beat? For me in the NFC, I don't know. It's so close. I think Aaron Rodgers still owns the Bears, but how is he going to do against other people? I think the Cowboys, I was happy they won. I had some good bets this weekend, some not so good bets, 50-50 roughly on the weekend, but that's one that I was at work, and it was before I was going on air for our sports memorabilia show. We were doing some warehouse work in the background, and I was telling the shipping guy about my bet, didn't know anything about sports. I was yelling back and forth. I had Cowboys -3.5. And the way they covered was absolutely wild. I will say this, though. The Cowboys perhaps shouldn't have been in that game. They had more talent. But I don't know that Mike McCarthy. I don't love Mike McCarthy as a head coach. I think he's got some issues. NFC is wide open. I think Bucks are maybe the team to beat because of their pedigree. But I think the Cardinals and Rams are great on both sides. I got to think about it more. I do think home field will make a big difference, though. And the Cowboys in that weak division position themselves in a good spot to be the team that makes the playoffs, makes the Super Bowl if they do get the home field. Tom, what do you think as far as favorites? And then we'll transition into the bottom of the NFC as well.
Well, first off, I think that you and Aaron Rodgers at last share something in common where you don't necessarily know if Mike McCarthy is going to be is a very good football coach, one Super Bowl ring notwithstanding.
Sure.
I'm just going to stick with the Rams for now as the best team, but it's a similar, setup to what we have in the AFC where we've got, as you talk about parity, there's definitely a couple different echelons. There's parity within the different levels of the NFL in terms of the best of the best. You've got like 4 or 5 teams on each side. And then as far as kind of, who's the best of the rest, you talked about the records a little bit. Right now, it's kind of like there's one playoff spot that is available for everybody else in the NFC. Got a big glut of teams sitting right around, that 3-3 mark. So as far as kind of like who do I like best out of the rest of those guys, I'm going to go with the Panthers. We talked about them a couple of weeks ago when they were sitting 3-0. But I like them for a couple different reasons. I like them in part because of the schedule. It's the same reason why I said a couple of weeks back they're a pretty decent shot at making the playoffs just because they don't face the Tampa Bay Buccaneers until like the last 2 out of 3 games of the season when Tampa might never have everything else locked up.
Yeah, but that looks like it could be tougher though, because Tampa may be fighting for that 1 seed. But go ahead.
Could be tougher for sure. But as far as the Panthers go, and as far as their own merits go, Sam Darnold has shown flashes of really, really good, also flashes of really, really bad. He's still a young quarterback at 24. He's got plenty of experience, but he has some de-jetsing that he needs to do a little bit more. I think
I see
Chuba Hubbard has been filling in pretty well for Christian McCaffrey, and they're going to get him back after he comes off of his roughly 3-week IR stint. And then defense is good. I mean, defense is a pretty consistent, solid for this team, as we've seen throughout the season. It's just a matter of, can the offense not mess things up? Can Robbie Anderson catch a pass? That sort of thing is going to play a big role in the Panthers being a marginal team to make the playoffs, because in a game of inches, you can't be dropping a pass when you're a 3-3 team.
Yeah, you definitely can't, especially if I picked you to win and Drew Brackett had the other side. I'll tell you this. I'm like cooling off on the Panthers, and I think Sam Darnold hasn't looked as good in the last few weeks. Part of it is the drops, like you mentioned, but I think Christian McCaffrey not only what he does on the field, but the threat of Christian McCaffrey, I think makes everything easier for that offense. If Christian McCaffrey is 100% healthy, they have a shot, but it's sort of like how you see the Seahawks are without Russell Wilson. They're not nearly as good. The Packers without Aaron Rodgers aren't nearly as good. The Panthers without Christian McCaffrey aren't nearly as good. And at this point, given what we've seen the last few seasons, Christian McCaffrey is very injury prone. And that's not always his fault. But once you get hurt once, then you get hurt again, it takes a toll on your body. I just don't like the Panthers. They're trending down for me. Their defense, which, by the way, was playing great earlier in the season, they did not play well against the Vikings. So I will disagree with you on that one. The statistic that I had is 9 teams in the NFC either have 2 or 3 wins. Some are 2-3, some are 3-3, some are 2-4, depending on the bye weeks, which we just entered now. But I think the Panthers they got off to a fluky start. I don't like them. The Falcons have 2 wins, but they beat some of the worst teams in the NFL. They are not a very good team. The Seahawks without Russell Wilson are going nowhere in that tough division. Washington and Philly, they just aren't good. They beat the Falcons, and they play each other, and it's a weak division. They'll pick up some wins. So that leaves for me really 4 teams that I think have a legitimate chance to make the wild card, the last spot. That's the Bears, Vikings, Saints, and 49ers. Of those 4 teams, I will say the Bears and Vikings, I think, are the worst. I think the Vikings defense is really, really poor. They used to be a good defense, but they're horrendous on defense right now in Minnesota, and that's a legitimate concern. I think the Bears, their defense is playing better the last few weeks, but it's not the same defense it used to be, and their offense still has issues with the play calling. Montgomery is hurt. I know they had their 3rd-string running back filling really well this last week, but they still don't have all the weapons. Justin Fields still isn't quite there. So I don't like Chicago either. I think the Saints and 49ers are the 2 best teams in that slot. I actually think San Francisco might be a little bit better overall if healthy, but Jimmy Garoppolo has been banged up. George Kittle is in the IR, and they play in the best division in football probably in the NFC West. So I'm going to go with the Saints just because I think their schedule is a little bit easier than San Francisco, and the Saints have a lot of talent. Jameis Winston is inconsistent. He's up and down. You don't know what Jameis Winston you're going to get. But they probably only have to go 9-8 or 10-7. They still have Alvin Kamara, who's one of the best overall running backs in the NFL. They still have a very good defense, and they have a very good coach in Sean Payton. Not to mention that Michael Thomas is coming back off injury as well. He should help their team. So I think the Saints, they've been in the playoffs so many years in a row now. Losing Drew Brees hurts them, but I don't think that they're going to not make the playoffs. So I like New Orleans to be that team in that 2-3 win range that makes the final playoff spot.
Yeah, I think it's the Saints or the 49ers. 49ers have just had so many injuries and
the last 2 years.
Yeah, so I think that they could be one of those teams too.
Yeah, we're kind of on the same page there. Tom just loves the Panthers for some reason. Like
they
3-game losing streak. You're still on that wagon, huh?
Yeah, I think I'll stay on the wagon. You know, we've got that January 2nd game in Carolina looming large between the Saints and the Panthers. That'll go a long, long way, given that the Panthers already have one in the bag against the Saints. So it'll be good
tiebreaker game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, all of those teams have a chance. I will say this: obviously, injuries play a part in it. I think San Francisco, if healthy, maybe would be better. But a lot of times, this saying is true. You are what your record says you are. I know, and that's at the moment. That doesn't mean that you can't improve. Like the Chiefs obviously are better than 3-3. They've played a brutal schedule, and they're figuring things out, and they're eventually going to go on a losing streak because of all the wins they've had the last few years. But at this point in the season, like, you are typically what your record is. So what that tells us is that there's a lot of teams that are bunched up. Well, it's week 17 is going to have a lot of meaning. And what's great is it'll have meaning as far as who gets the final wild card spot. It's going to have meaning as far as who wins the NFC West, as far as who gets the 1, the 2, the 3, the 4. It's going to matter a lot. I think every team is going to have a lot to play for come the last week of the season. Maybe the Giants and Jets will be playing for a number 1 overall pick. who knows? Jaguars in that mix as well, but Jacksonville did pick up their first win this season against Miami, so it'll be fun. I think there's, like as you mentioned, Tom, you put it really, really well. There's levels in the NFL. There's a lot of parity among the top of the NFL. There's a lot of parity in the middle of the NFL. And then there's a lot of parity at the bottom of the NFL, quite frankly, because you look at the Jaguars Dolphins, that was an incredible football game. So there's a lot of talent in the NFL. And even some of these teams who have one win, they're actually good football teams. They are good football teams, believe it or not. I watched that Jacksonville-Miami game, and there was some good football being played. So I think it's going to be an exciting NFL season. Give me the Saints still making the playoffs again. And I said this last week, the amount of like talent that we'll have quarterbacks going up against each other, like the NFC, we've got Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, Kyler Murray. Well, Russell Wilson won't make the playoffs now. Who am I missing? Who's the Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers? I mean, those quarterbacks are sick, and Jameis Winston might be the last one. Maybe doesn't belong in that group, but he is the first overall pick. He plays at his best. He's up there. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. You have Herbert as well in the AFC. It's going to be wild. I can't really confidently predict anything going forward with the NFL this year, and that's the way I like it.
That's what makes it fun.
Absolutely. Well, we'll move on to college, guys. The Big Ten has 5 teams ranked in the top 11. What are you thinking for the Big Ten title game this year?
Yeah, it's gonna be wild in the Big Ten. It is wild. It's kind of like what I said. I've been preaching this all year. I think the Big Ten has by far the most depth in college football. They are by far the best conference in college football. But 5 in the top 11, but they're all ranked from 5th through 11th as well. They should be. Ohio State is perhaps the only one who I think is truly a top 4 team. I've got them maybe like number 4. But I think for me, there's a few of these teams that we really got to find out who they are before we can judge them. Michigan and Michigan State. Number 6, Michigan is 6-0. Number 9, Michigan State is 7-0. Neither one of them have played anybody. Ohio State is 3-0 in conference, 5-1 overall, losing against Oregon. Penn State lost a close game at Iowa when their starting quarterback got hurt. And then, of course, there's Iowa themselves, who's number 11, lost at home to Purdue like 24-7, got embarrassed. So, I mean, that tells me that Iowa, to me, isn't truly legit. I mean, like, you have a bad game, but like when you get upset, like you see what happens to Alabama. They got upset against Mississippi State. They lost by a possession. Ohio State against Oregon. It was like a 1-2 possession game. Like 3 possessions against Iowa is alarming. It tells me that Iowa is not on that same level. They still might make it out of their division because they're in the weaker division. Although Purdue will have something to say about it because they've got the tiebreaker now. As far as the other teams, I don't like Michigan or Michigan State because I think neither of those teams have explosive enough offenses. Michigan doesn't have a passing game, and they've got the toughest schedule. They play at MSU, at Penn State, and then home against Ohio State. But they never beat Ohio State, no matter where it is, under Jim Harbaugh. And then Ohio State, I think, is the easy answer. I think C.J. Stroud, their quarterback, they lost early against Oregon, and that's what happens when you have a freshman quarterback. It might take them a few weeks to get going. Their last few games, Ohio State 59-7, 52-13, 66-17. They are not messing around. They can pass, they can run, they can play defense. Ohio State, honestly, at this point, is probably a solid number 3 team in the country. Number 4, I mean, I think Georgia is the best team in the country without question. Alabama, to me, is still the second best team, even with that loss, Mr. Brackett. And then it's like Cincinnati and Ohio State. I mean, those 4 kind of look like the playoff to me. I am not sold on Michigan and Michigan State, but I could definitely be wrong because we haven't seen them play anyone yet. So we'll find the jury's out on those 2 teams.
Yeah, that Michigan State game is going to be coming up pretty soon in the calendar. So one of them's got to win it. One of them is going to come out with some legit bona fides heading into this one. But I completely agree with you. I mean, it's Ohio State is the team that preseason looked like, the most talented team, probably a shoe-in for winning the Big Ten, and they have a very good chance of being just a simple one-loss Big Ten champion, which, for all intents and purposes, should put them squarely in the playoff, right in that 2-3 range, most likely. With Georgia, I think, unlikely to get a loss. But who knows? If Alabama, Georgia meet in the SEC championship game, that could flip the script entirely on a season where we've seen Georgia kind of sort of playing a different level of football from everybody else in the NCAA. OSU, I mean, they're definitely going to have to earn their way into it, though. They have 3 of their top 10 games are at home, which I think is an advantage for them. They've got Penn State, Purdue, Michigan State are all going to be home games for them, with Michigan being the one on the road. But as you said, Harbaugh has no success against the Buckeyes.
None.
Given that they blow out everybody except for Oregon so far, I think Ohio State's a pretty safe pick for making it out of the Big Ten and making it into the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think you have to go with Ohio State. They're bound to, figure things out. And of course, they just have the one loss. So, I think they'll just continue to dominate.
And that's a good loss. Oregon, I think, maybe isn't like as good as people thought. I don't know. Oregon still only has one loss, but they look a little flat. But I think they're still for sure a top 10 team in the country. So that's not a bad loss to have if you're Ohio State. I mean, who would you guys pick to be the number 2 team in the Big Ten, if not Ohio State? If an injury happens, a fluke play happens, because I had a feeling we'd all pick Ohio State. Drew and I are dressed up in Ohio State colors, in fact. We didn't plan that, no. But Drew Brackett also looks like Blaine Gabbert, the former Mizzou quarterback, by the way. Loving that look.
Of course.
Who do you guys think is like the other team to watch in the Big Ten, if not Ohio State?
The winner of the Michigan State game. Whoever comes out of that one, I think, is a nice second runner-up there. I think the West Division is too weak, really.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's definitely the winner of Michigan and Michigan State for sure.
I will go ahead and have a little fun and disagree. I think hands down, the second best team in the Big Ten is Penn State. I think Penn State has a really good team. If Sean Clifford didn't get hurt, their quarterback, they would have definitely beaten Iowa, and they would be right now probably ranked number 2 in the country. It is amazing what 2.5 quarters of football will do to you. Sean Clifford, there's still some question marks about his injury status. I think if he doesn't get back to being 100%, then Penn State's probably in trouble. But I think Penn State is probably the other team to watch. If they can upset Ohio State, which is a big if, but if they can somehow upset Ohio State, I would put them in for sure the running, because I think they're going to win all their other conference games. They'll probably just lose to Ohio State. Then they'll be out of the tiebreaker. They already lost to Iowa, so they'll be in trouble. But that's the team that I would look for, because I think Penn State is going to beat Michigan. I think they'll beat Michigan State. So they get a few bounces to go their way against Ohio State. You never know. But I like Penn State. I love their receiver. That's going to be a star in the NFL. I love their coaching staff. I love their home field environment, which now matters all of a sudden with the schools opening back up and us playing in front of really full stadiums across the board. So Penn State, I think, to me, is definitely the second best team in the Big Ten. And they would be the one other team to look out for, if not Ohio State.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, kind of a weak slate of college games this weekend, by the way. I don't know that we have any top 25 matchups going up against each other, maybe 1 or 2, but there's really no marquee games this weekend. So this is also a good opportunity to see some upsets, maybe. We'll see.
I mean, there aren't any ranked versus ranked teams, but
Correct.
There's definitely a great slate of games.
Well, which game are you looking forward to the most, Drew, or 2 games?
I mean, Wake Forest Army, Wisconsin, Purdue, Oregon, UCLA, Clemson, Pitt, San Diego State Air Force, USC, Notre Dame, a historic rivalry, and then in the ACC, NC State, Miami. Those are all close games.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of good games. Our college football pick'em group we do between the 3 of us is really, really close. Very, very close, in fact. The 3 of us are just like neck and neck. And some of those games you mentioned, we'll have to pick them this weekend. And those are going to be some really, really tough picks. I think which is ironic because I always point this out every year. It feels like so many years I got the most wins, but Drew would edge me out because of confidence points. Well, this year, actually, I have the worst record picking games, but I'm in first place because of the confidence points. But all three of us are like neck and neck in both picks and confidence points. That college pick'em group, it's going to be a three-way showdown until the last week of the season. I wouldn't expect anything different. There's been such a wild array of upsets in college football. It is literally insane. And that's just why, like, all these Big Ten teams, that's what I said, they're going to beat each other up. I think Ohio State is the only one that I can see emerging out of the Big Ten after the title game with only one loss. That's the only one. And they could still get another loss and still win the Big Ten, by the way, because their non-conference loss, their loss was in the non-conference. So Ohio State could go, lose one game in the Big Ten. They have two losses, and then they obviously will clobber Purdue or Iowa. So I'll have more on Locks of the Week, by the way, about that Purdue-Wisconsin game, a really puzzling line for me. So that's one that I'll definitely be picking. I won't be mortgaging any houses, but I'll be picking it.
There you go. Well, we'll move on to our NBA preview. Season starts here shortly. The regular season preview, I should say. We'll start with MVP. Common, who you have?
Oh, this is such a hard question. And I was talking about this at my other job on the air the other day. In the history of sports, there's never been more parity among superstars than we have in the NBA right now. I think in the NBA, if you look at like ESPN's player rankings, the 9th best player is honestly as good as the 1st best player. Like they had like James Harden, like 7th, 8th, or 9th. And like James Harden is probably like just as good or maybe slightly below Kevin Durant. But you can't say that much separates James Harden and Kevin Durant. And one is like 1st best, the other is 9th best. I think the NBA is crazy. There's such a small gap. I think it used to be that, everyone knew Jordan was top dog. Then LeBron was top dog. LeBron has, by the way, still in the conversation for top dog, but I think he's just slipped a little bit with his age. And some of these other players are so good right now. So I'm very, very conflicted on the MVP race. I think I will go ahead and rule out a couple guys, though. I think I'll go ahead and rule out LeBron himself just because I think with Anthony Davis and Russell Westbrook there's a lot of basketballs to be had around. So it's going to be hard to win MVP if you're a Laker. I think Nikola Jokic is probably not going to win 2 in a row. It's just very hard to win 2 in a row. He's a great player. Damian Lillard, I don't think his team is going to win enough games. Luka Doncic the same way. I think Lillard and Doncic, it's not fair that your team record matters, but it matters a lot when it comes to the MVP race. So I'm going to rule out guys like Lillard and Doncic because I don't think they have good enough teams to get up there. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and pick. So I have 2 names that I'm sort of split between. It's Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. Those are the 2 I'm split with. I think the Warriors are going to take a massive step forward this season. I think Klay Thompson expected to come back around Christmas, maybe sooner. So when he comes back, that team's going to be better. I think James Wiseman, second-year player. Iguodala's back for some veteran leadership. So Curry will be in the mix, but I still think the Warriors won't win quite enough games. So I'll go with Kevin Durant, and that's because I think Kyrie Irving, I don't know how much he'll play, given his reluctance to get vaccinated. I don't know if all of that is talk, but Kyrie Irving also has been injured like crazy the last few years. As far as Harden and Durant, like they had injury issues this year, but that's not something we've seen consistently throughout their career. So I believe those 2 will be healthy and key pieces. But even if Kyrie does get vaccinated, which is, again, a big question mark, he's gotten hurt so much. He misses games for family reasons. Like, I think Kyrie's just it's not going to be a big 3. It's going to be a big 2. If Kyrie plays every game, Durant's MVP chances are obviously in trouble because then there's 3 basketballs. But James Harden in the last year has shown that he's willing to be the 3rd scorer on that team. He's willing to be a traditional point guard. He's willing to set guys up. And James Harden will be an MVP candidate himself. But if Durant's going to be the leading scorer, people gravitate towards whoever the leading scorer is. So Kevin Durant, I think, is going to be the leading scorer. He won't face a crazy amount of double or triple teams because Harden is there. Harden's going to pass him the ball. I think the Nets are probably going to have the best record in the league. And Durant, like last season, he was hurt. He's going to be healthy now when he's back from the offseason. He's an incredible player, an incredible talent, perhaps the best player in the league, maybe. Again, all 9 or 10 of the top guys are close. But I like Durant's chances because I think he's going to put up big numbers. Harden is ready to allow him to be top dog. And I think the Nets are going to have a great record. So I'll go with KD for MVP this year.
Yeah, this is going to be one of those situations where if you list off the top 3, 4, 5 players in the league, maybe I think really only one of them is a great MVP contender just because you've got so many of them playing together. Durant and Harden both playing together and both meshing really, really well. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Kyrie Irving this year. He likes to champion that kind of contrarian without a cause type of mentality, that type of vibe.
Facts.
So I think that it'll be probably like Harden and Durant are probably going to split, who carries the load. I mean, we also have seen them in the past couple of years doing a lot of load management where Durant will sit out a game, Harden will sit out a game. So I'm actually going to go with somebody who took a year off from being MVP, but I'm going to go with Giannis. I think MVP comes down to who is the clear-cut best player on one of the top 2 or 3 clear-cut best teams in a conference. Obviously, if the Mavericks end up having a really good season where all of the role players step up in a bigger way and we see Dallas being, a top 4 team, absolutely. I think Luka Doncic is going to be a heavy favorite for MVP. The problem is the past couple of years, that just has not been the case. Giannis is the clear-cut best player on his team with Milwaukee. We saw what he can do, over the course of an NBA Finals. And of course, he's not going to do this every game in a regular season because it's 82 games. You do have to pace yourself to be there when the playoffs come. But you're looking for big, impressive numbers. You're looking for, points and assists or points and rebounds. Well, Giannis can do points and rebounds really, really easily, being the unicorn-type player that he is in today's NBA. So didn't get it 3 times in a row. No Larry Bird here. 3 out of 4 ain't bad, to paraphrase Meatloaf.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah, I think I'll go with just probably Kevin Durant to win MVP. Yeah, we'll go with Durant. Sure.
Wow.
I had him on the short list too. We almost had a show sweep on that one.
And it's funny, Tom. I, by the way, probably agree with every point you made. But the one thing that I think Giannis has going against him, and it's probably not fair, but I've noticed that the league just does not like giving MVP to the same guy constantly over and over. And they'll do it like earlier in their career, like Bird, Magic, and like Jordan at one point when he got hot. And then they'll tend to give guys MVPs late in their career, like just for like a narrative. But they don't want you stacking up like 7, 8, 9 MVPs. So that's the one thing, like, and this is not fair. And
sure.
It's not about like who deserves the MVP, because like for deserving MVP, like I think there might be a guy who, like you mentioned, 2 guys that share the load. He may not have as good stats as someone else, so someone else deserves it. But I think if there's a tiebreaker vote, if the MVP race is Giannis and someone else, I think Giannis is going to lose the tiebreaker vote just because he has won 2 MVPs in 3 and 4 years is tough. It's also tough when we have so many evenly matched guys, like we said, because I think that's also like a sort of like how do you say it, like an image thing, like the NBA, and the
optics,
NBA knows this, the optics. They know that they have so many evenly matched players. So for them to give it to Giannis, like it sort of sends the message like Giannis is the best player in the NBA. And that may or may not be true, but Giannis is, I would say, obviously is not clearly better than the rest of the field. And if you're winning 3 MVPs in 4 years, in my opinion, like typically you're thought of as someone who's clearly better than the rest of the field. So I think Giannis is going to lose some optics votes.
Sure.
I think he's going to lose, and that's not fair. But at the same time, though, is it fair towards Durant and Harden, or like LeBron and Davis, or like, some
or
of these,
Luka,
like some of these superstar guys yeah, they have another guy who's going to steal their numbers, but it doesn't mean that they're not the most valuable. And in a case like Luka, like, yeah, if your teammates aren't good enough, you're not going to have the best record in the league. Curry's the same way. I think the Warriors will be much improved, but like he's in a similar boat too. It's like if you have the fourth, fifth seed, it is hard. But Jokic did it with the Nuggets last year, so it's not impossible. So it
sounds like a Paul George campaign right here. Paul George for MVP. This is what I'm hearing from you, Common.
I can't stand Paul George. I actually don't mind Kawhi Leonard. I'm a Clippers hater, and Paul George is the big reason why. And I just don't love all the resting they do. That's another thing you brought up, like with Harden and Durant. It's like all this resting doesn't always work. Giannis actually played like almost every game last year. I think he had a brief injury at one point, but like play the game, folks. And that's some of it is going to go down to which player wants the MVP and which team is actually going to play everyone. Because it's going to be wide open. Injuries will make a difference. It's going to be really, really close. I think, yeah. To me, and correct me if I'm wrong. And let me ask you this: 2 questions, 2-parter. Who do you guys think is MVP aside? Right now, not career, the best player in the NBA? And would you agree that there is not a clear best player in the NBA?
The second question, yes. The first one, KD.
Durant?
Giannis, his team won the finals last year, and he's the best player on the team.
Well, yeah, but Drew, let me counter that. Like, would Giannis have won the finals if Harden and Kyrie were healthy? Because that's the thing about that Nets series. And that's another thing why, like, we'll talk about predictions here in a little bit, but that's another thing Kevin Durant has going for him. I think that Durant pushed the Bucks to 7 games basically by himself. You look at that series, I think there was one game where Kyrie played and was healthy, but there was not a single game in that series where all 3 big 3 were healthy and playing together. It was because of Durant that they got that far. I think Giannis was fortunate. He took advantage of the moment, much like Kawhi Leonard did in Toronto. And that's the way the modern day NBA is structured with all these super teams. You have yourself a super team. That means your bench is not going to be as good. Your role players are not going to be as good. So 1 or 2 injuries can cripple you. Ask the Lakers and Nets. The Bucks are designed in a way that they have a ton of depth, a lot of very good players. The roles are clear. But in order to win the whole thing, they need an injury. And that's what they got last year. Several of them, might I add you.
I mean, we'll see what happens this year. But, I mean, he just destroyed whoever they played in the finals. I don't remember who they played. But,
the Suns?
I mean, he put up 40 points a game probably.
Sure. The Suns didn't have anybody who can guard them. That was the issue. Matchups also matter. I know a lot of teams don't have anyone who can guard them, period. But the Suns didn't have anyone at all. Like DeAndre Ayton was the only one who was big enough, but he was too slow. Like, and that's the issue with the Nets. I think the Nets could have won that series if they had Durant guarding Giannis more and Giannis guarding Durant. Like both those guys, it was weird that they weren't on each other more. But I look at the Lakers, they can throw LeBron, they can throw Davis at them.
I mean, you don't want to get tired on defense if you're Durant. Somebody's got to score.
Sure, but that's the point, though. Like, he couldn't get tired because all the guys were banged up. But if Durant is healthy and if Harden is healthy, it's going to be a different story. Durant can actually exert more energy on that side of the floor. Let's just get straight into it since we're talking about it. Who do you guys like coming out of the – or actually, no, are we going to do teams who missed the playoffs that will make it this year? Let's do it that way. We'll tease that. We'll tease our East picks because I think it's going to be fun. And our West picks will be fun too.
Well, I think it's just going to be short, sweet, easy homer. I'm going with the Chicago Bulls being a team that didn't make the playoffs last year and will this year, basically because they have almost an entirely new team. It's going to be really exciting. I don't know how well they're going to play defense, but I think they'll be an entertaining, probably like top 6 team in the East and a fun first round before they're knocked out of the playoffs.
I couldn't agree more. And I'm not just a homer guy because I picked against the White Sox when the playoffs started. So Tom knows I'm not just homering.
Mhm.
I think the Bulls are awesome. And by the way, I want to make this clear. I was looking this up, and as far as I understood it, the play-in tournament does not count as the playoffs. So when I say playoffs, I mean 8 teams that make it.
Yep.
So I don't want you to say this team is going to make the play-in tournament. This is going to be the 8 teams who are in the playoffs, and obviously you're safer off picking a team who you think is going to be in the top 6 so they can avoid that tournament altogether. But it's definitely the Bulls. I think last season they added Nikola Vucevic. He was an all-star for the Magic. They added DeMar DeRozan on the offseason. Talk about an all-star. DeMar DeRozan's a very good NBA player. Zach LaVine was an all-star last season, and he played for Team USA Olympics. We've seen the stories and stats when guys play on the Olympic team to take a step forward. Well, this guy's already been taking a step forward each of the last few seasons. If he takes another step forward, it's going to be crazy. They also added Alonzo Ball, who is a guy who's also been improving, and he's a passer. All these guys who can score, LaVine, Vucevic, DeRozan, well, they have Lonzo to get him the ball. And an underrated piece, what about Alex Caruso? He's the guy who played on a championship team with the Lakers. He's going to be able to give them some pointers, some veteran leadership. I think the Bulls are going to be a 6 seed. Probably, like Tom said, at worst, they'll be a 7 and win in the play-in game scenario. At best, they can maybe get a 5. I think the team that I look at that is not going to be as good as last year, obviously, I think the Wizards, Pacers, and Hornets, these were teams who were like 8, 9, 10 in the play-in games. Those teams are not going anywhere. Wizards losing Westbrook, Pacers and Hornets, I think, aren't that great of teams. And I think the Knicks are the one team that's going to be fighting for that 8th playoff spot, because I think the Knicks greatly overachieved last year because of Thibodeau and their defense. I think their regular season didn't speak to their talent. I see the Bulls hopping all those teams and probably getting a 6 seed like Tom mentioned. I mean, I know it's the preseason. It doesn't matter a ton, but the Bulls were 4-0. They were beating teams by 40 points. They had 20-plus winning margin. These guys look good. It means something to me to see them connecting and working well together right away. And Billy Donovan already made them better last year. Another step forward in making the playoffs in Chicago this year. I like what the new management is doing, and I definitely think the Bulls are going to be in the playoffs. I think they'll probably be one and done, like you mentioned, Tom, unless there's some sort of injury. But I feel good about them making the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take the Hornets. No, Hornets. Go with the homer pick. Take the Hornets.
We're all going with the geographical area that we live in.
Sure.
We are not biased sportscasters. No such thing as that on the show.
No way.
No.
So, Drew, you picked the Hornets last year, and what they made the play-in game but lost. Is that right?
Correct, yeah.
So you were very, very
right
close.
There.
Sort of right. And I think they'll be right there again. I think the Hornets will definitely be in the play-in game. I see them maybe being like the 9th, 10th team and just missing. If they get lucky, maybe they'll be the 8th team. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think you've got what? You've got the Nets, the Bucks, the Sixers, the Heat, the Celtics. Those 5 are in. Who am I missing? The Bulls, obviously, I think will be in. That's 6. And then I guess like the Knicks maybe as a 7. Mm-hmm. And then maybe the Hornets is an 8. Nets, Sixers, Bucks, Hawks. Yeah, I don't know. Heat. I think those 5 are the 5 elite teams in the East. I think the Bulls are probably the 6th. And then the 7th and 8th is going to be really, really close.
Yeah, it should be interesting. How about in the West, Common? Who you got?
Yeah, the West is sort of a no-brainer decision. So I'll give you a couple different possibilities. I mean, I think it's the Warriors because they were in the play-in game last season. They actually, I think, were, the 8th seed. If they ended the season records, they would have been in the playoffs. But they happened to have to play the Lakers, who were only the 7th seed because LeBron was there. And then they had to play the Grizzlies, and they lost that one-game scenario against the Grizzlies. But I think this season they'll be better. I think James Wiseman, I actually look for him to be better year 2. And Klay Thompson coming back makes that team so extremely different. if he's remotely close to the Klay we knew before, they're going to be very good. And my thinking with Klay Thompson is that he's going to be pretty close to who he was because shooters shoot. You don't lose the ability to shoot. Klay Thompson's a solid athlete, but he wasn't overwhelming anyone with his dribbling or his athleticism. Like, he's more of a shooter. So I think he's going to come back and do what he does, and that's going to open up the court much more for Curry. It's also going to open up the court for Wiggins, who's an athletic player. And Draymond Green is going to be able to just pass the ball and focus on doing what he does best, because obviously I think Draymond Green does better as a role player as opposed to a lead type player. So I think the Warriors will definitely make the playoffs. Even if Klay isn't healthy, they made it last year practically. They just lost a play-in game. So I think the Warriors are pretty safe. I'll give you one team that will make the play-in game that didn't make it last year, though, a team that I think is going to be very close to making the playoffs. And if the play-in games go right, maybe they'll be in. I think that's the Pelicans. I think Zion Williamson and Brandon Ingram are a very good 1-2 duo. I think there's not going to be as much load management. I think they're getting better playing together. I mean, they weren't far off from making it last year. And the team that I think is going to take a massive step back this season is the Spurs. The Spurs, like, I looked at their roster. They don't have like a single all-star. Like, DeMar DeRozan is gone. We had LaMarcus Aldridge is gone. I know some of those guys left before the season ended last year, but they contributed to them getting enough wins. Greg Popovich, he's a great coach, but like, it's different when you're coaching role players, because you look at that roster in San Antonio, it's filled with role players. Like, if they had 2 superstars, that team could be a great team, but they have 0 superstars. Like, I mean, they were struggling even with DeRozan, who's sort of a superstar, but not really. Mm-hmm. Now they have no one who even remotely resembles a superstar. So I think San Antonio is going to take a massive step back this season. I mean, they still may get 35, 40 wins because they have a great coach, but they're not going to be in the play-in game. I look for the Pelicans to be in the play-in game instead of them. And then the Grizzlies and Pelicans kind of fighting it out for that final playoff spot is what's going to happen. The Warriors, I think, are pretty safely in the playoffs. I think the Lakers, the Suns, the Blazers, the Nuggets, like all the Mavs, the Clippers. I mean, I think the West is going to look very similar. So will the East. I think with all these super teams, I don't think we'll see any crazy surprises.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll just say the Warriors because they're by far and away the clear-cut favorite, I think, to make the playoffs out of the non-Western Conference teams. There's no team like last year, the Phoenix Suns, where they were outside and, on the rise to get in. I mean, you could say that if the positions were flipped, the Grizzlies, I think, are a very intriguing team, but they technically did make the playoffs last year. So, yeah, I'll stick with the Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, you got to take the Warriors here, no brainer. Comment, who do you think wins the Eastern Conference Championship?
This will be good because I know Drew Brackett. I know where he's going. I think Tom and I are going the same way. I'm taking the Nets out of the East, and I actually think it doesn't even matter whether Kyrie Irving plays or not. I think Kyrie Irving is sort of a bonus, and honestly doesn't even help them that much because I think he's a sort of a distraction, and he has been over the years. We saw him leave the Celtics. They played better without him, and then again last year they didn't play better without him. So who knows? But like, I think Durant and Harden alone, I think they are the best 1-2 duo. All due respect to LeBron James and Davis, but I think Harden is better than Davis, in my opinion. I know they're completely different positions, but he can do more to take over a game, and he can take over a game passing and shooting. So I think that's just the best 1-2 duo in basketball. And Harden and Durant really, I guess Durant had the injuries last year and a few years back, but they're not guys that have tended to miss many games throughout their career as a whole. Harden barely ever missed a game. Last season with the COVID, the shortened seasons, rushing guys back, neither of those guys were consistently healthy. I think having an off season allows those two to get healthy, and I think it gives them a much better team than the Bucks. Not much better, but a better team than the Bucks in the East. The Sixers, we've seen Joel Embiid's a great player, but and I'll have more on Ben Simmons in Statement of the Week. Maybe you'll talk about him before, Tom. But Ben Simmons isn't cutting it there. Embiid needs a second superstar. I know Chris Middleton isn't quite a superstar, but he's a very, very good second option. I mean, Embiid doesn't have anyone like Middleton on his team. Same for the Hawks. We saw Trae Young put on our show. He doesn't have a legitimate number two. So I think the Bucks and Nets are really the only two that have a chance. I know the Heat have upgraded their roster, but I still put them a clear step below. So I love the Bucks' chemistry. If the Nets do have injuries, the Bucks can do it. But assuming that they're healthy, I think that that duo of Durant and Harden, a second year together on that team, and a year where they're both healthy, there's just too much depth. I mean, that's the thing. The Nets pushed the Bucks to 7 games, and it was basically Durant himself. Forget Kyrie Irving. If we just get James Harden on that roster, the Nets are going to come out of the East.
Yeah, I like the Nets as well. They were my preseason pick to win it all last season. I like them a lot this year, in spite of Kyrie Irving not playing. If anything, that's kind of like a borderline win-win for the Nets, where they're going to learn to play without him. They're going to be able to develop some more depth for when he comes back, if he comes back. As a side tangent, how fun would it be if NBA decided to do a little, right before the season starts, a little trade, Kyrie for Ben Simmons, perhaps? I'll trade my problem for your problem type of thing. I think Simmons could actually fit in somewhat decently, because between Harden and Durant, and then you throw in, Joe Harris, you got LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin, he doesn't even really need to shoot.
He's going to be left wide open, though, and that's the other question mark. Like, he will be left wide open. Like,
and that's have a good enough offense to win 4 on 5.
Okay. It's an interesting trade proposal. That's very interesting. I think the Sixers would be very happy with it, even with all the cancer that Kyrie causes.
Yeah, this is what, year, 2 or 3 with the Nets super team. I got the Nets out of the East.
Not the Bucks? You're not going with your Bucks?
It's year 2 or 3 of the Nets super team.
Yeah,
they're going to figure it out.
It's year 2, actually, because Durant and Kyrie were both actually hurt the first year. So they signed them like 2 years ago, but neither one. Actually, no, that's not true. Kyrie played the first year at some points and got hurt, but Durant that first year didn't play at all with them. Even though they signed him, he basically had like a year where he sat out. So yeah, I think year 2 is going to help, though. It's going to help those guys mesh. It's going to help them do big things. I think the Nets are the clear pick out of the East, but I think the West is a lot more wide open, guys. What do we think in the West? Because the West is going to be fun, because I look at about 6 teams in the West have a legitimate chance to make the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I think Lakers are probably the most favored team to make it. But I really don't feel like cheering for that, so I think I'll go elsewhere with my pick. How about like a little bit of a dark horse? Go with like the Denver Nuggets. Speaking of a star player who's, they're going to have to play without, Jamal Murray is going to be out probably a couple more months. But that just gives the Nuggets time to develop some chemistry without him, and then it's kind of like picking up a mid-season trade acquisition. Not very many teams are going to do much better than picking up a Jamal Murray. So sure, why not go with Michael Porter Jr. having to take a step up, being a primary or secondary scorer, depending with Nikola Jokic. You've got Aaron Gordon at power forward, who does a good job defending 1 through 5. Monty Morris provides some decent depth. So yeah, I'll go with the Denver Nuggets just because.
Quite the pick. Drew, what do you think?
Well, I'll go with the Los Angeles Lakers because of Russell Westbrook.
Okay.
It's a good reason.
I thought so.
That's a terrible reason, and that'll actually be a reason that I'll talk about in the NBA championship when we get to that pick. I think in the West, so the Clippers have the ability on paper to be up there, but you guys know this. I simply don't trust the Clippers. I don't trust Paul George in the playoffs. I know there's guys who have who take a step forward in the playoffs, like Rajon Rondo does. But Paul George is the opposite. He takes a step back in the playoffs in recent seasons. So I don't like the Clippers. Doncic doesn't have enough help in Dallas. I think the Nuggets are intriguing because Michael Porter Jr. is sort of becoming, he was already becoming a legitimate number 2 last season. He might be an all-star this season. He is that talented on offense. Granted, I think certainly a lower tier all-star, but I think he could be an all-star. But for him, he also needs to play defense. That's the big question with him. That's the big question mark with Denver. Can they play enough defense? I know you mentioned Aaron Gordon can play defense, but who else can play defense? I don't know. So that's my question mark with Denver. I think Portland, Damian Lillard's a great player, but they haven't gotten him enough help. McCollum is underrated, but they don't have really a third guy there. I don't trust Portland. I said I don't trust the Clippers. I don't trust the Mavs. I think the Nuggets, I don't trust their defense. The Suns, I think Chris Paul is a year older. Eventually, he'll slow down. I'd argue that he slowed down a little bit in the finals. Sure. The wear and tear of a playoff run hurt him. And I think the DeAndre Ayton not getting the max deal, like there's just something there. Like, I don't know if they should have given it to him or not, but I think I lean they probably should have, honestly, because he's going to be really a cornerstone to your team for years. So I think that just may not like sit well with him and the team. They're just, something rubs me wrong. And it's hard to make it to the finals 2 years in a row. You got to be really, really good, get a lot of breaks, which the Suns got last year. I don't see them getting the breaks this season. So I've kind of narrowed it down to 2 teams. One is a favorite, the other is a sleeper. And yes, I'm going with my favorite players, but I actually think you really got to keep an eye out for the Warriors. I really think Klay Thompson is that great of a player. I think Klay Thompson is one of the most criminally underrated players in the NBA. Talk about a two-way player like Paul George is, but that's a two-way player that actually delivers in the playoffs. Ask Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook and the Oklahoma City Thunder what Game 6 Klay Thompson did to them. 42 points, I think 11 threes from way downtown. I mean, and he has such a quick release that you can be in Klay's face and it doesn't even matter. Like, so I think they've got that pedigree. They brought Andre Iguodala back. I know they're not quite like other teams have stepped up, and maybe it's not quite the same, but it sort of feels like the whole gang is back together. Like we have Steph, we have Klay, we have Draymond, we have Andre. Like Andre, I know is not the same player he was when they were winning championships, but still a pretty good addition. I think James Wiseman, he was the number 2 overall pick. Andrew Wiggins was a number 1 overall pick. So there's a lot of talent on that basketball team. That's my sleeper team, the Warriors. But I am going to pick the Lakers because I think they have the best team. People that are criticizing them for being old, well, this is sort of like they're sort of trying to replicate the recipe that they won for them 2 years ago. 2 years ago, the issue was the Lakers are old. They don't have enough three-point shooting. Well, guess what? If you're really good at what you do, you're really good at what you do. Look at the Lakers rebounding. They have Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Dwight Howard. They added DeAndre Jordan. I mean, you're going to have to make your shots against the Lakers because there's no offensive rebounds to be had. And they are one of the top defensive teams in the NBA. They added Rondo, by the way, talk about leadership and a guy who knows how to win. Carmelo, I think. Carmelo's going to have fun playing with LeBron. I think those two are going to have fun together. I think the Lakers, like, yes, some of those guys are past their prime. My concern is, can Westbrook legitimately be okay with being number 3? But I think Westbrook is also sick of not winning in the playoffs. So I think he's going to have to be okay. I don't know. That's my question with them. Like, how does Westbrook fit into that? But I think talent-wise, they have the best team. And I know they're older, but because they have so many guys who can get it done, LeBron can maybe take a bit of a rest at times. I think Davis can take a rest. I mean, Carmelo's the perfect example. Carmelo's not quite who he was, obviously, but Carmelo is streaky. I don't know how many games you watched last season, but there were some games with Portland where he looked like prime Carmelo. So there may be a night where Carmelo is just streaky. He may have 2 points, 0 points, and then that one night, Carmelo's streaky. That night, LeBron, Davis, they say, Carmelo, you do your thing. Westbrook's the same way. Westbrook is streaky. He's not consistent. That's why I don't like him. He doesn't have the field goal percentage, but he's streaky. LeBron and Davis are all of a sudden going to be playing with guys who can deliver in certain stretches. So I'll take the Lakers to make the NBA Finals.
Yeah, it's going to be on Frank Vogel to find a way to kind of stagger the minutes, if anything. I mean, if you consider, Russell Westbrook a pretty durable player outside of, a pretty major knee injury. you stagger his minutes where maybe, LeBron comes out, partway through the first quarter, you let Russell run with the second crew a little bit where he can be that ball dominant player and stagger things that way. You can effectively have a superstar to two superstars on the court at any point in time, which makes them a formidable choice heading into the NBA Finals. We've each picked our conference favorites, so it comes down to Drew between Lakers and Nets, Common between Lakers and Nets, and then myself between Nuggets and Nets. Where's everybody going on this one?
Yeah, so just to piggy point off what you're saying, Tom, because again, they're not going to ask him to play like more than 20 minutes, really realistically. I think Rondo is also a really, really good point guard. I think that's been the issue with LeBron in all those seasons in Cleveland. And even in Miami when Dwayne Wade got hurt, like Mario Chalmers wasn't like a true-ish point guard. Like LeBron's had to run the point. I think he's got not one, but two guys that can now run the point. I think Rondo is still a very capable player. So, obviously for a backup point guard, he's a dream. Like, without question, the best backup point guard in the NBA, no question. So LeBron doesn't have to run the point all the time. He's got Westbrook and Rondo. But as far as the finals, I think this is where Westbrook is going to get in the way. I think in the NBA Finals on the biggest stage, you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis on your team. Those guys should be taking the shots. Earlier in his career, he played with Durant, and Westbrook was not willing to let Durant take some of those game-winning shots. And that's what cost the Thunder, quite frankly, a championship. I just don't trust this man enough. He's going to have certain moments where Russ is going to Russ. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to be, Game 6, Game 7 of the NBA Finals, game on the line. Like, we know LeBron's a willing passer. We know Davis doesn't necessarily handle the ball. I think there's going to be some situations where Westbrook is going to have the ball in his hands, and he's going to miss. He's going to have one of his Westbrook turnovers. I like the Nets because I think Westbrook is going to screw things up in the clutch because he's a horrific player in the playoffs. Talking about guys who are not good in the playoffs, Paul George takes a step back, as does Russell Westbrook. His field goal percentage in the playoffs is even more abysmal than the regular season. So I think Russell Westbrook is going to cost the Lakers when it gets to the brightest stage. I think he'll help them in the regular season, giving guys rest and providing sparks. But come the NBA Finals, when it's the two best teams going at it, I think the Nets have the best 1-2 duo because I think Durant is at least as good, if not better, than LeBron at this stage. And I think Harden is better than Westbrook. I think Harden is better than Davis. I think, honestly, if Kyrie Irving plays, I look at it this way. Kyrie Irving is better than Russell Westbrook. James Harden is better than Anthony Davis. Durant is at least as good, if not better than LeBron. I mean, the Nets' big three looks way better. But even if Kyrie doesn't play, I think the Nets also have really good role players. I didn't even talk about this earlier. Like Blake Griffin, they didn't have LaMarcus Aldridge last year in the playoffs. He thought he was retiring. I think Joe Harris hasn't been in the playoffs much. I think Joe Harris will be an improved addition in the playoffs. I think Steve Nash, another year of coaching, will improve. So give me the Nets over the Lakers in the NBA Finals.
I'll take the Nets as well over the Nuggets.
Yeah, bold prediction, Nets.
Now we're boring. Tom, you should pick the Nuggets to win it all. That'd be something.
I already picked them to beat the Lakers. I did my part on the anti-chalk. It's up to you guys on this one. You're the ones going odds-on favorite both ways.
Yeah, I'm
surprised. Just because it's boring doesn't mean it's wrong, though.
I'm surprised Drew's not going with an underdog. He likes the underdogs.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, so let me ask you this.
Really like Russell Westbrook, so that's part of the problem.
If it's not, and I know you don't actually like him. You're just saying that to get my juices going. I know deep down.
Yeah, and it worked because you just talked about him for like 10 minutes.
Absolutely, it works. The guy has
the guy's worst, like 50 years old by now.
Some of the worst field goal percentages, worst turnover to assist ratio in the NBA. The guy puts up numbers because he stat pads. He has the ball in his hands. I'd
do the same thing if I was him.
Yeah, and guess what happened?
Fun.
Guess what happened? When Houston, he didn't stat pad as much with James Harden. He won't be able to stat pad as much with the Lakers this season. So I'm looking forward to his numbers being down, down, down. But let me ask you this then, guys. If you could pick one team, maybe that neither of us picked to make the finals, who would be your other pick to win it all? A team that you did not pick to make the finals?
Out of each conference, or just
out of each
in
conference
total?
Or in total, whatever. Like, what teams do you like? Because I know my team.
Oh, the Bucks.
The Bucks?
Defending champs, of course.
Defending champs.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to go against defending champs and then a team that probably would have been right in the title conversation the past couple of years, if not for a couple of Klay Thompson injuries. Like, those are probably,
the Bucks
right there,
Warriors?
second best. But I've got my adopted teams, my adopted players. I'm going to be pulling for Portland along with Denver. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
And of course, like, if the Bulls do really well, I'm not going to be upset at that at all. I just don't think that's going to come together particularly well.
Drew, a couple things. I sent this to Tom. So Tom has this run of like some of the teams and players he adopts. They do questionable things. Like, he adopted Tsitsipas, the tennis player.
He's off. He's been disowned.
Tsitsipas has been disowned. Not that they've necessarily done anything wrong off the field, but on the field, the Colts, I think, have probably been disowned.
I'll stick with them. Okay. Bovada took down the number, but I was looking at them for locks of the week.
Okay. Well, one example of a guy that, like, Tom is not booting off his disownment, his adopted players, was Damian Lillard. I think Damian Lillard had one of the best takes on the COVID vaccine, and we won't get long into this, but I mean, he basically said that, like, as a kid, you get all sorts of shots that maybe you don't know everything about, but if it came down to him, it's like, if I could give my family and myself a better chance, like, why not do it? I mean, nothing is a guarantee. Nothing is foolproof. There are arguments on both sides, but I thought the way that Damian Lillard put it was really well put. For me, I think the Warriors are a team to look out for. Obviously, those guys have players who have done this already. And Curry looks as good now as he did when they were winning the championships. It just comes down to Klay Thompson. Is he going to be as good as he was? Because I think he's a shooter. The answer to that question for me is yes. So the Warriors would be the outside team. They're one of those teams where if an injury happens and they catch them, like, really hot, like if Steph and Klay are both on an insane shooting spree, they can beat someone in a limited series. So if they upset someone somewhere and they make the finals, it's possible. So Warriors 1, I think Bucks would be the obvious pick out of the East. I think the East is pretty safe in the Nets Bucks. I mean, barring anything absolutely crazy, that is pretty safe. I think the Nuggets are not a terrible prediction for Tom if we're looking for possible underdogs, like the Clippers if they put it together. I will say this: keep your eyes on the Mavs. Mark Cuban is an interesting guy. I can see the Mavs doing some sort of trade where they make themselves better at the trade deadline and give Luka a second piece, because that's something that we haven't thought about. Like, the story in Dallas is Luka doesn't have anyone else. Just like a little gut intuition that they're going to get him a number 2 option at some point.
Definitely. Well, we'll move on to baseball. We got an NLCS game going on right now. Braves up 5-2 over the Dodgers, end of the 5th inning. Do we think the Dodgers have any chance in this series?
Yeah. Wow. 5-2 Braves in the 6th?
Less so than at the beginning of the show.
Are you kidding me?
They were down 2-0, and they've scored 5 straight. Top of the 6th. Yeah.
So I better, like, not even look at my notes. Maybe I need to revisit my stance on this subject, because
yes, you were wrong, so you can revisit. You're welcome to.
I can revisit. Well, I was wrong at even writing my show notes, because
I know.
I thought the Dodgers would come back. I'll be honest, like, it's sports, it's crazy, and you know what's really, really funny? I was watching the ESPN Monday Night Crew, or like NFL Live or something. They had a panel of like 5 different people, and they were picking the Bills-Titans game, and like all 5 picked the Bills, and 4 of them picked the Bills by double digits. Like they did their score predictions. And I also, by the way, had the Bills myself. So my thought when I saw that, I was like, the Titans are going to win. And like even though in my heart, like on paper, the Bills were better, but I was just like, as soon as I saw that, like ESPN was all over the Bills winning that game by double digits, mind you.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, Titans are winning tonight. I was like, I've already placed my bets. I wish I could take them back. It's too late now. Titans are winning. And that's kind of like what it is with the Dodgers and me and other people. I've heard some stuff online, and a lot of people seem to think the Dodgers were going to come back. And I think on paper, the Dodgers had 18 more wins than the Braves. The Dodgers have the best home record in baseball. They don't lose in LA hardly ever. The Braves barely squeak by both of the first 2 games. So my thought was Dodgers have the playoff experience. They'll put it together. They've got, better pitchers. They got better hitters. I mean, without question, they have a better team than the Braves. And the Braves were a team that everyone was ready to ride out. I think Ronald Acuna Jr. got hurt. I think Tom Castleman on our show alone said the Braves aren't going to make the playoffs about 2 months ago after that injury. Mm-hmm. So I think throw out all the stats, throw out all the logic. We know this in baseball. You're hot. The Braves are hot. They don't have a better team than the Dodgers. If they played 100 games, I'm convinced the Dodgers win at least 60. But in this series, I mean, it's 5-2 in the 6th inning. I don't think the Dodgers come back this game. I think they'll win at least a game in the series, but coming back from 3-0, forget about it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where this just goes to prove that the baseball regular season is what determines the best team in the major leagues. The playoffs are a tournament that just determine the winner of the World Series. You saw this with the Dodgers taking down the best team in the bigs as far as record goes with the San Francisco Giants, and now on the verge of losing to a Braves team that had, 88, 89 wins, something like
wins,
this.
106 for the Dodgers.
Yeah, so it's definitely, the hotter team. We might be touching on the Red Sox, Astros, or the Red Sox coming in as the second wild card team, I believe. They played in New York, if I'm not mistaken, and here they are potentially knocking on the door of another trip to the World Series. So, yeah, it's all about who is executing best at the moment, who is clutch, which is the absence of choke. In my estimation, who's most likely to just be themselves when it comes down to the big moments. The Braves bullpen has been pitching lights out for the entire series. They're going to have to hold up for 3 more innings against the Dodgers here. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 4 more innings against the Dodgers as it's the top of the 6th. So we'll see, but I think it's pretty heavy on the underdogs for the Braves.
Absolutely, I agree. How about in the ALCS? You think the Astros can rally, or you like the Red Sox?
No, I mean, it's the year of the upsets. We've talked about this on this show many times. Gonzaga getting upset in the college championship. We had the Chiefs getting upset in the Super Bowl. We had Chelsea with a massive upset win over Man City in the Champions League. We had, we just had another one. I'll hit on this during our salute to the week. We just had the Chicago Sky, the WNBA, as the 6th seed, won the WNBA championship. They were playing the 5 seed, by the way. And in the NBA, I know injuries played a part of it, but we had the 3 seed, I think the Bucks were, and they won the NBA championship. We had the 4 or 5. Well, the Hawks were the 5 seed, were in the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, this has just been a really wacky year. A lot of wacky things have happened. A lot of upsets have happened. I mean, my Argentina and Messi, they beat Brazil to win the Copa America. That was another upset. It's just I don't know. And it's crazy. Djokovic had all these wins, and he started getting upset late in the year too. So it's, he lost the U.S. Open. He lost the Olympics. It's nothing has gone according to script. So I'm going to stay with the theme and go with what the hottest team is. Because I said this before the series, the Red Sox were 15th in pitching on the regular season. The Astros had a much better staff. Their lineups were close. Houston was even better in the lineup department if you look at the regular season. But right now, and in baseball, whoever is hot makes a difference. The Boston Bats are on fire. The last 3 games against the Rays, they averaged more than 9 runs a game in that division series. They're averaging more than 8 a game in this series. Enrique Hernandez has 5 home runs and is hitting .500 in the playoffs. He is absolutely locked in. As a Cubs fan, I can tell you how good Kyle Schwarber is when he's locked in. 3 home runs in the playoffs, including a grand slam in the last game. .281 batting average. He's not even a good batting average hitter. If he's getting .281, you know you're in trouble. Rafael Devers, Xander Bogaerts. I mean, these guys are all raking at the plate. And keep this in mind, when you look at Boston's regular season, Tom knows this guy, Chris Sale, the former Chicago White Sox ace. They didn't have him for most of this season. Chris Sale, I think, is going to deliver some great outings on the mound as well. I like Boston to stay hot. And honestly, I probably at this point, like Boston to win it all because that's what the Red Sox do. I know it's different years, but like they're one of those teams where they go from last to first and they have like a 60-win season, and the next season they win the World Series. We might have that again. I'll take Boston. Absolutely.
I hope not. I mean, I guess I'll take Boston because they're the hotter team, and I dislike them slightly less than I dislike the Astros.
Sure.
But yeah, it's kind of a rough shape when the most favorable team that I have left from a personal perspective is the LA Dodgers, and they're not looking particularly good right now. So yeah, I guess I'll take the Red Sox out of the American League.
Yeah, I agree. I'll take them as well. Locks of the week. Let's hear a recap.
Yeah, Drew Brackett. I don't know what happened last week. You were hotter than hot, but you had a really bad week last week. You had 5-0 a couple weeks ago, 3-1, 4-1, 3-1-1. You've been just hitting everything. Last week you cooled off. You got your one soccer under EPL over under, like that's a given. You get that every week. Everton, West Ham under 2.5. That was 1-0 West Ham, so 1 goal. You missed a few NFL picks by a lot too. That's what was surprising. You didn't just miss them. You missed them by a lot. You had the Lions +3 versus the Bengals. Bengals winning 34-11 by 23. Browns, you had -2.5 over the Cardinals. The Cardinals won that one 37-14. Vikings, Panthers under 46, 34-28 in overtime, 62 points. And then you did have the close one, Giants, Rams under 47.5. It was 38-11, so 49 points. Drew Brackett with a rare bad week, 1-4. Tom Castleman on the other side had a phenomenal week. Tom was 4-1. What a week, Mr. Castleman. You got the Bengals -3 over the Lions. Bengals won 34-11. You had the Cowboys -4.5 at the Patriots. I may have placed a wager on this game in several different places, not in locks of the week, but I was very, very happy with how that game ended. Cowboys winning 35-29 in overtime. The Patriots got the ball first. You thought, well, they got a touchdown. It's over. The Cowboys field goal would have won it, not covered. I actually had it at 3.5, so it would have been an even worse beat for me. So they get the touchdown at the end. They're also down 1 point in that game with about 2.5 minutes left. Patriots are about to run the clock out. Instead, Mac Jones throws a pick 6. It looks very, very bad. It goes from very bad to very good for Dallas, but then they give up a touchdown again. The Patriots actually get a 2-point conversion, which put them up 3. Had the Pats missed the 2-point conversion, the Cowboys field goal at the end has them win the game by 1. So wild game. Big cover for Tom and I. You had the Packers -4.5 at the Bears. I should have just gone with it because that's the one I had in my locks of the week. And I pulled out because I wanted the Bears to win. And I couldn't bring myself to bet on the Packers against the Bears. But Rodgers owns the Bears, 22-5, winning that one 24-14. Chargers +3 versus the Ravens. You missed that one badly, 34-6 Chargers. For the record, I agreed with you. And we were both wrong, 34-6 Chargers losing. And you had Bills over 30.5 points versus the Titans. They had 31. And part of that is because they had a 2-point conversion. So you were really, really happy with that.
I was cheering for the math on that one, for sure.
Yeah, you were cheering for the math. I have this thing, guys. I've said this every week. I have a winning week followed by a losing week. That has happened every one of the weeks on Locks of the Week. I win one week and I have a losing week the other. Unfortunately, I had one really bad losing week, which has really brought my record down a little more. But I was 2-3. I had the Chiefs -6.5 over Washington. I got that one right, 31-13. They won by 18. I had the Chargers, Ravens over 51.5 points. That one had only 40. Missed that one. Bills -5.5 at the Titans. I was wrong. The Titans winning 34-31. I did have the Dodgers -1.5 over the Giants in game 4. That was correct, 7-2 Dodgers, and I had under 8 runs in that game. There was 9 runs. Dodgers win 7-2. They got a 2-run homer in the bottom of the 8th that really screwed me over because that under looked great just about that whole game up until that homer at the end. So 2-3 week for me. Mr. Brackett, you are barely in first right now. 16, 12, and 2 is what I have you at, and I have Tom at 15, 12, and 3. So Tom just has one less win. I'm 12 and 18. I have not done as well as expected, but I think things will turn around. I will defend my crown from last season's Locks of the Week, maybe defend my tied crown with Tom Castleman. What do you guys have
it's very
today?
tied.
It was tied. We tied last year.
Who's going first? Is it me?
Sure.
Okay, so with the NBA starting up, I had to get at least one lock in, so I will go with my hometown Chicago Bulls, covering 5 points over the Pistons. That'll be played on October 20th, this upcoming Wednesday. It'll be great to hear Chuck Swirsky and Bill Whittington on the radio, 670 The Score, so that's going to be a lot of fun to listen to.
I've met Chuck.
Oh, have you really?
Yeah, at a Bulls job fair a few years ago.
Cool. He's an iconic voice here in the city, so definitely looking forward to that one. Following up Thursday night, we've got some football. The Denver Broncos in Cleveland. Cleveland's really banged up. No Nick Chubb, no Kareem Hunt, a really banged up Baker Mayfield. Give me the Broncos to cover the 3.5 point spread on the road. Going in a pretty massive direction, give me the Cardinals -17.5. Dare I go to 3 possessions? I think I do.
Wow.
And give me Patriots -7 against the Jets. And then, was points happy with Bills Titans. Give me the points with Chiefs Titans as well. I believe that is at 57. Maybe you can find it 56.5 someplace. Depends on where you look, but I'll go with 57 on Bovada because that's where I get my numbers.
Tom, there is a reason why we tied for Locks of the Week last year. I was going to have Drew go, but I'll go now since it transitions better. Tom and I tend to have a lot of the same picks.
How many do we have this week?
It happens a lot. We've got 2 of the same picks this week.
Oh boy!
So we almost had 3, in fact, but we have 2. So you had, what did you have the Chiefs Titans over under at?
I have it at 57, but I'm also on ESPN seeing it at 56.5. So we could go the better number.
Well, let's go 57 because I have it at 57.5 on DraftKings.
Oh wow! Okay, we'll split the difference then.
We'll do 57. Chiefs Titans over 57. The Chiefs scoring about 31 points per game. The Titans about 28 a game. That's 59 points if you add up the math. If they hit their averages. On top of that, though, Kansas City allowing 29 a game. Tennessee allowing 27 a game. And against legit offenses this season, Tennessee gave up 31 to the Bills. The Chiefs gave up 38 to the Bills. Then we had the Titans allowing 38 to the Cardinals. And the Chiefs allowing 36 to the Ravens. So look for the best QB in the NFL to dominate in Patrick Mahomes and the best running back in the NFL to dominate in Derrick Henry. Chiefs Titans over 57. I feel great about that one. And then I might give you the better on this one since you found an even better odds on the other one. I currently have on DraftKings, I have the Patriots at -6.5 against the Jets. So you want that half point?
I mean, if you're going to give it,
I'll give it because I want it. I'll take the Patriots at -6.5 over the Jets. Week 2 in New York, the Patriots won 25-6. Belichick is 22-6 versus rookie QBs in the NFL. The Pats allowing just 9.5 points per game in their last 6 games against rookie quarterbacks. The Patriots actually looked pretty good on offense this last week against Dallas. I feel pretty good on the Patriots winning by 7 or more against the Jets. By the way, the Jets and Belichick aren't under the best terms, so I'm sure he wants to beat the Jets as well. The Pats have lost a lot of close games in recent weeks. I think this is a game that Bill Belichick sees that they can scheme up a defense to dominate Zach Wilson and the woeful targets that he has. I mean, you talk about Sam Darnold looking better in Carolina. That shows you how bad the Jets' targets are. So I think Belichick draws up a game plan, doesn't leave it to chance. They win by 7 or more, no problem. And then I'm thinking sort of the opposite of you. I'm not picking the same game, but I'm gonna pick the opposite logic. I'm gonna take a team with a big number to cover. I'll take our hometown Chicago Bears to cover 12.5 at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Bears actually beat the Bucs last year. Take it for what it's worth, but those two rosters actually look pretty similar compared to last year. I know that game was in Chicago. I know the Bucs weren't what they were, but still, I think the Bears have some matchups there. I don't think they're going to win the game, but 12.5 points is a pretty big line. The Bears looking better. They've won 2 of the last 3. I know they lost by 10 against the Packers, but they were actually winning early in that game, and it was only a 3-point game late in the fourth quarter until the Packers got a touchdown to put it away. And heck, if they lose by 10, I still cover. So I think that's a really, really big spread. I know the Bears aren't a great team, but I'd say the Bears are pretty average. That's fair to say. They're 3-3, pretty average team. In the NFL, average teams don't often lose by 2 touchdowns, even on the road. I mean, we see a lot of close NFL games. I mean, we had the Patriots are an average team. They almost beat the Cowboys this last week. I know they were at home, but still. So I like the Bears covering the 12.5 point spread. And then, Tom, we also think alike in that we like to pick when a new sport comes back. So I also thought I'd pick the NBA. So I will go ahead and pick tonight's game, the opener, Warriors plus 3.5 at the Lakers. 2 of my favorite players and teams playing. I know I'm a big LeBron fan. I give a lot of LeBron stats in the positive. Well, here's one a negative for LeBron. I think LeBron is one of those guys that eases into the season. His team's 7-11 on opening night in his career. Think about all the winning LeBron James has done in his career. Only 7-11 on opening night. In fact, the Lakers have lost 4 straight opening night games as a team. There's a little extra research for you there. So I like the Warriors plus 3.5. Last year, by the way, the Warriors won 1 out of 2 games versus the Lakers in the regular season. Then they lost the play-in game by just 3 points. I have a feeling the Warriors covered the 3.5. I'm not sure who's going to win the game, but those extra 3.5 points just have me excited about Golden State. And then finally, I go to college football for my last lock. We've agreed 3 NFL picks. The other 2 can be whatever we want. So I'm going Purdue plus 3 versus Wisconsin. I have watched Wisconsin quite a bit, and they have no semblance of an offense this season. I watched them against Penn State. I watched them against Notre Dame. They have just no cohesion. They're not a good team. They're 3-3, and the record shows it. Purdue is 4-2. They're coming off a 24-7 win over number 2 Iowa. Is Iowa the second best team in the country? Absolutely not. But are they still a good team? I mean, you're not ranked number 2 if you're completely bad this late into the season. So the fact that Purdue is hot, they're riding the hot wave, they're at home, and they're still an underdog at plus 3. I have not watched Purdue play that much. That's the one thing that has me worried. But I have watched Wisconsin, and just my gut feeling, I mean, you just beat the number 2 team in the country. You're at home. You have momentum, and you're a home dog against a 3-3 team in Wisconsin. That's just like a really, really fishy line. Maybe Vegas knows something I don't, but I feel this line, I look at it the same as the Cardinals-Browns line. I felt the Cardinals-Browns didn't look right. I bet that line. I wish I had done it on Locks of the Week because 2 of the picks I had written down for Locks of the Week last week that I didn't pick. One was the Packers game, simply because I didn't like the Packers, so I wanted the Bears to win. The other was the Cardinals line, and the third, admittedly, was the Chargers line. I would have missed that badly, but I would have gone 2-1 if we had bonus picks. So I'll go Purdue +3 against Wisconsin because that line just seems fishy to me.
All right. Well, I'll go EPL, Crystal Palace, Newcastle United under 2.5 goals. Then I'll take the Donkeys +3.5 over the Brownies. Brownies win that one by a field goal. Dolphins +2.5 over the Falcons. I'll take the Cardinals -17. Tom, I know you had 17.5, but I saw 17, so we'll certainly take that number. And then we'll take the Pats -6.5 over the Jets. Both teams are terrible, but it's in New England.
And I don't think the Pats are terrible. I'd say they're mediocre. I wouldn't go as far as terrible. So, Drew, you actually agree with – so everyone on the show is picking Pats -6.5 over the Jets. I don't think we've ever had that
the Jets are real bad. The Pats are pretty bad, so I'll take the pretty bad team.
So you're telling me that I should go to DraftKings and bet a ton of money on that game?
Sure.
All right. It's been noted. I might have to do it. I'll take my paycheck comes in Friday, actually, so that's good timing.
7-0 affair.
7-0. That might honestly be like I kid you not. I can see that game being 14-3. Like that's a legitimate score. I could see in that game. Maybe 13-3. I think it's So that's crazy. So we all have that lock. You have
13-3 all field goals.
Yeah. So, but here's the funny.
That'd be 12, wouldn't it?
Here, this is the most fun locks of the week we have. I think it's really fun when we disagree also, but in terms of ones where we agree, I have 2 of the same lines as Tom, and you have 3 of the same lines as Tom. And ironically, I almost picked the Broncos +3.5 against the Browns also. So we could have had 3 show locks.
One would say we colluded, but we all know that's not possible.
So we're all either going to look really smart next week or we'll all look really dumb. For the sake of our
we'll be sheepish.
For the sake of our credibility, I hope those picks go pretty good this week.
Yeah, Good luck to us.
Yeah, good luck to us. Patriots -6.5 over the Jets. I love it. I feel really, by the way, that literally is one of the most confident locks. Like, I'm not going to use the M word because it's going to jinx it. But I like when I looked at the NFL lines, I'll be completely honest with you guys this week. I only picked 3 NFL picks because I did not like the NFL lines this week. I really didn't. Like, I'm picking the Bears one just because it's a big number and I felt to pick it, but I don't feel highly confident in that pick. I've got
at least 3 other teasers I could have gone.
Oh, well, I feel really, really good about the Patriots line. Like, if there's one line that I would look across sports this week.
How can you feel good about that line? They're not good.
I feel great. The Jets are horrendous. I
still
don't know how the Jets beat the Titans. That's one of the craziest things. I actually think the Jets are the worst team in the NFL. That's my opinion. I think they'll have the number 1 pick come the NFL draft. I still don't know how they beat the Titans. I really don't. That's just one of those. I'd say of all the shocking things that have happened this year in sports, the Jets beating the Titans is right up there for the most shocking. That score just still does not make any sense. And it's because
not Chelsea over Man City. That's kind of shocking.
That was shocking, but it's soccer. And Chelsea was hot. Talk about baseball. Yeah. Chelsea was hot. And that happens in soccer too, by the way. Because those are one game. That was a one-game scenario too. I mean, I know this was too, but football, it's there's sort of physicality that you can out-physical the team. I just thought that Derrick Henry, I don't know. That was just
the Jets have big football players. It's not like they're 200 pounds on that line.
What are their other results? I'm going to pull this up on my phone right now. The Jets' other results except for that game. Because I know they have one win.
A close loss to the Panthers, a close loss to the Falcons.
Yeah, those teams are not good. They also lost 26-0 against the Broncos and 25-6 against the Patriots.
They've had some tough games, yeah.
Yikes. Yikes.
And I should have done more research. Maybe I shouldn't have picked the Patriots because I didn't know they already played. Goodness.
Well, so you think that actually, because that's another question. I'll ask you this question before we go to our next segment. Does the fact that they are so like, it's very hard to beat the same team twice. It's the age-old saying in sports. But at the same time, when the matchup is this different, like 25-6, 19 points is a lot to make up. I feel very nervous. Like I feel like the team that lost is going to improve the next game. But when it's 19 points, like on the road too, the Patriots were on the road. That's such a huge margin. Like I don't like. So the Jets have to make up like whatever 13 points in order to cover the line.
I mean, but they're different games though, different weeks, different teams, player personnel have changed. It's totally different. I mean, I get
not
why
that
you're saying
much
you have
has
to
changed.
make up.
It's the same season. It was like 4 weeks ago.
I mean, the Patriots lost their best defensive player.
He wasn't playing though. He didn't play in that game. He was out. He didn't even play in that game. He was on the whatever PUP list. He didn't play in that game. That doesn't make a difference to me. And their defense is still among the best in the NFL. Their corners have been great all season. Yeah, they've got one of the top defenses. They had a bad game this last week against the Cowboys. I mean, everyone's had a bad game against that Cowboys offense. The Patriots shut down the Bucs. They've shut down like everyone they've played. They should have a better record because their offense isn't good enough. But defensively, they were number 2 in secondary a couple weeks ago. I know the Cowboys probably hurt those statistics, but they're one of the best defensive teams going up against one of the worst offenses. Like I feel really good about New England.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now that you're saying it, maybe I look to the under in that game.
Well, you already made the pick.
I know.
You're locked in, buddy. No mulligans here. No mulligans. I hope you feel good about my pick. All right. Sports trivia, I think, is next. Anyone have a sports trivia question? I know Drew doesn't.
I do. It is evergreen, though. So if you have something a little more topical, you can go ahead with that.
Mine is also evergreen, but I'll go ahead and ask you, and maybe we can do both of ours because it's such a fun trivia question, and we didn't do it last week, so we'll do it this week.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to trivia, my favorite sport for trivia is probably baseball. I honestly enjoy watching football better. I probably enjoy like soccer and basketball a little bit better. Like baseball is probably number 4 of those sports to me. I still like it, but I put it a little bit lower than the rest. But as far as like statistics and trivia, like baseball is the number 1 sport for trivia, I feel like you cannot beat baseball and trivia. There's just something really neat about it. So here's an excellent trivia question. What baseball players have 500 home runs and a 300 batting average? I didn't ask that a few weeks ago. I think I asked something similar to it, I believe.
Albert Pujols?
No, Albert Pujols has dipped below 500. There's 10 of them. 1 is active, and there's a good chance that he slips by the time he retires.
So for the active one, that would be probably Miguel Cabrera.
Nicely done.
And then for the other 9, I mean, I have to go with some of like the big hitters like, Hank Aaron.
Hank Aaron is 1.
Ted Williams, did he get to 500?
Ted Williams, yes, is another. You're missing the most obvious one.
Babe Ruth.
Babe Ruth is another.
The kid, Ken Griffey.
Ken Griffey was just under 300.
Frank Thomas.
Frank Thomas is 1. Barry Bonds was just under 500 or 300 also. Bonds, I think, was like 298. Griffey was somewhere around that area too. So you guys have 5 down, 5 to go.
I'd have to go like Willie Mays.
Willie Mays, nicely done, Tom.
Who else is up there?
So
Alex Rodriguez didn't have the batting average, did he?
Think again.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Alex Rodriguez.
Rafael Palmeiro?
Not Rafael Palmeiro. I'm looking up Griffey right now, what his average was exactly. So you're missing 3 guys. 2 of them I don't think you're going to get. Griffey actually was only 284. Thought he was higher than that.
See, I don't think Stan Musial got to 500 home runs.
One is one who is especially if you take a look at this statistic, really criminally underrated player when you think of the all-time great players.
He's
Murray? A guy that say that again?
Eddie Murray? Is he on the list?
So this is a guy that we watched in our era. He is retired now and has been for about, well, I guess he's been retired longer than I thought. He's been retired now for 8 years. Well, actually, he last played in the majors in 2011, and I guess he played baseball for a few more years after that. So he's been retired for quite a while, but it's the guy that we grew up watching. Very underrated player, especially when you think of these statistics. Played from 1993 to 2011. Say that again?
Jim Thome?
No, but that's another underrated player.
Like, damn.
Jim Thome didn't have the average, but Jim Thome.
I'm thinking like Chipper Jones.
Not Chipper Jones.
Because he didn't get to 500 home runs.
World Series champion. 312 batting average. I did not know he hit this high batting average. He's a 12-time All-Star, a 2-time World Series champion, a World Series MVP. Somehow he never won a regular season MVP, though.
Is it Manny Ramirez?
Manny Ramirez.
That's a good guess.
Nicely done.
I had to pair that down.
I had him in my head, too. Oh, that's brutal. I had him
312 batting average and 555 home runs. That's incredible. Manny Ramirez. Sign him up for the most underrated baseball player of all time, because that's incredible.
Definitely most entertaining.
He was fun.
I mean, that guy, the amount of times he went in the Green Monster to do whatever he did was it's incredible.
He had to take a bathroom break like Tsitsipas, Tom's player. Tsitsipas needed those bathroom breaks.
Or the other two, Common.
So the other two, I'll give you guys a couple clues.
Okay.
I won't spend it forever because I don't know that you're going to get either of these guys. Because these are, first off, the
I'll need
obvious
a clue or two, but I might be able to get there.
Neither of these guys played while we were alive. In fact, I believe the one I'm looking up right now to give you a better clue, he died well before we were even born.
Lou Gehrig? He didn't get to 500 home runs. Eddie Matthews.
Let me look up the other. See a good clue for the other. I'll give you the years that he played. This might help.
Willie Stargell could be one.
So this guy played, and this is why he got to 500 home runs. He played from 1925 to 1945.
Jimmy Fox.
Nicely done, Tom Castleman.
There we go. 2 X's. And then is the last one Harmon Killebrew by chance?
Not Harmon Killebrew.
Al Kaline, Don Kingman.
No, I don't think. Okay, so this guy, this is a guy who barely got both, by the way.
Okay.
So this guy barely belongs on this list. 511 home runs. He played from 1926 to 1947. All with the same team.
Ty Cobb?
Not Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb was played earlier than
that. Yeah. Not
and Ty Cobb didn't have nearly enough home runs. I don't think Cobb was even close to home runs. He also managed for this team for 6 seasons. Actually, he was a player manager, by the way, too.
That's not going to help me.
Yeah, I don't know how much that helps. This is
like
the one.
Cap Anson or something like that.
Is like there was 2 that I thought you might not get. Jimmy Fox was one. This was the other. This was the one that actually surprised me because I've heard of Jimmy Fox.
Yeah, go ahead, give it to me. I don't think I'm going to get there. I'll know the name as soon as you say it.
Yeah, absolutely. Mel Ott.
Yeah, the only time I get him is when I'm doing the crossword because he's a really common clue.
Yeah.
I never get him for trivia.
Yeah, I told you, baseball trivia is fun. You guys did really well.
I had to go in the archives.
9 out of 10. Like, that's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Not bad at all.
I gave you some clues, but I think you got about half of them without any clues. I mean, I will say, to be fair, I think at least 3 or 4 were obvious. I think the Babe Ruth, obviously, the Hank Aaron, Willie Mays. I thought Alex Rodriguez was pretty obvious. I
didn't know if he had the average, but yeah.
Alex Rodriguez, like early in his career, had like insane batting averages. Like, I think he probably barely got there because he had a couple seasons at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is this? Okay, hold on. Let me look up this trivia question. I wonder if I looked it up wrong because this has him at 295. What the heck?
My instincts are right.
So you might be right. Let's see.
What's your question?
Well, shoot.
Oh, mine? This Tom, one's going to be just as difficult. If not more so.
Tom, you are right. Alex Rodriguez is not it. And this is what I get for. So there's a guy at my new job that asked trivia questions. Mm-hmm. And he asked this trivia question and gave us all the names. Gave Alex Rodriguez. There's also a Sporkle quiz that has Alex Rodriguez as one of them. So I confirmed. I looked it up online. I saw Sporkle had Alex Rodriguez, but it didn't factor in his last couple seasons. So I stand mistaken. Don't trust other people's trivia. And when you double check, don't trust Sporkle because that article is old. Man.
Jeez, I forgot about Sporkle. I haven't been on that site. And
I love Sporkle.
Probably since college.
I was on there earlier this year doing all the divisions and all the sports, all the teams and every major sport. Yardbacker is a good trivia one if you want to do that one. Yardbacker is fun. So actually, not Alex Rodriguez. So, Tom, you were right. Nicely done.
All right. Well,
I want to hear the tough one because I'm excited.
The tough one, well, that's evergreen. We can say, guys want to do it right now?
We'll do it real fast.
Okay. So, who has the NFL single game passing record? So, who's number one? And I'll even expand it and say, can you name anybody who's in the top 5? Because I think
absolutely
you could maybe come up with one.
I can get all of them.
Really? This will be most impressive. Go for it.
Ben Roethlisberger is one.
He's number 5.
Drew Brees is another.
No.
Not Drew Brees. Okay, Ben Roethlisberger. Frank Tarkenton.
Frank Tarkenton is not on the list for top 5.
Y.A. Tittle.
Close, but no cigar.
Is he 6th?
He might be, yeah. He's up there.
All right, so we got to get 4
But you're
more.
Getting into like a similar era with number 1.
I know I am. I know.
Matt
and
Flynn.
I used. What'd you say,
Not
Drew?
Matt Flynn, but think similar era, also kind of a journeyman backup quarterback. Well, no,
what
he
was
started
the question?
For a while. A single game NFL passing record.
Yeah, okay. Matt Flynn threw for like 600 yards one game, but okay.
He had that one crazy game that got him a $30 million
against the Lions.
contract.
The last week of the season against the Lions, I think it was.
Talk about legend at the bank.
That's right. So, Tom, I will preface this by telling you that I used to know the answer to this question, and I know it's a classic guy, and like it's escaping me, but I'm going to get it when I reason it out. And I know Ben Roethlisberger because when he did it, I remember them saying that this is it the 5th most for Ben? Was he the last one on that list?
Yep.
Because I remember when Ben Roethlisberger did it, this was what, like 5 or 6 years ago, I believe. What year was the Ben one?
A few years back. I'm actually like pulling it up on now to see if they'll actually give me the years as well.
And that's how I knew that answer because they said Ben Roethlisberger now is thrown for the 5th most yards ever. And the 4 guys ahead of him were all like different eras, like not in this era. So, but there was one guy, like you said, there's another journeyman who played in this era, I think, right?
Yes. So I'll start giving out some hints.
Sure. Drew Bledsoe.
No. So we'll go in like reverse order of era. So this guy played, he was a backup to Michael Vick.
Oh, Matt Schaub.
Matt Schaub is 3 on the list.
Yep.
Number 4 on the list is a left-handed quarterback.
Old school guy, right?
80s, 90s.
80s, 90s. Steve Young.
No, not Steve Young. The other left-handed quarterback from that era.
The other left-handed quarterback from that era. 80s, 90s.
You see him every single Sunday.
Oh, yeah, television. Ron Jaworski.
Nope.
No, Phil Simms. No.
Same crew.
Phil Simms was a righty.
Bradshaw?
No. Phil Simms is CBS or NBC now, right? CBS.
No, he's on CBS.
CBS. Shoot, the CBS crew.
Couldn't tell you who's on CBS.
Well, Dan Marino's on CBS, but he's not a lefty.
Yeah, he's also, I don't know, he's not on like their main show anymore.
Okay.
Played for the Bengals.
Yes. He is on their main show. I see his face. Boomer Esiason.
Boomer Esiason's 4 on the list. Number 2 plays for a team that is no longer actually in the league. They moved.
Warren Moon.
Warren Moon is number 2.
See, I told you I was going to get this, Tom.
And number 1.
The one that, so we have 5, 4. So it's Ben Roethlisberger is 5.
Boomer's 4. Schaub is 3. Moon is 2. Number 1 on the list played for both the Rams and the Eagles.
Rams. And he was on the Rams longer?
He was on the Rams for longer, yes.
Okay.
Gotta go way, way, way back in this one.
Yep.
Prior to the moon landing, I'm pretty sure.
The moon landing was 60s?
Yeah, way before the moon. Way before the moon landing.
Goodness.
This is before there were Super Bowls.
Yep. Lynn Dickey. No.
Nope.
So you want to hear something fun, Tom? So this sports trivia job that I'm doing, like I basically, you know this, I host like a podcast basically selling sports memorabilia, like a game show format. And we have all these old school guys that we pull helmets for. So actually my old school knowledge is like stepped up even more than I knew before. That's why I guessed Y.A. Tittle, because we have Y.A. Tittle.
He was the second person in NFL history to have a 500-yard game.
Yep.
That came 11 years after number 1. For the sake of time, I'm going to give it to you. It is Norm Van Brocklin.
There you go. Yep, I knew that one. As soon as you said it, I knew it.
I had this old football book. I had a couple of them growing up, and there were stories about Norm Van Brocklin, Y.A. Tittle, Night Train Lane. So I have a bunch of old stuff just bouncing around in my head. Deacon Jones, before they even counted sacks as a stat.
Real quick trivia question. You either know it or you don't. I won't give you clues because it's an old school guy, but I learned this through my job. Most interceptions in NFL history. This is a fun one. You'll remember this one after I tell you. Really old school player.
Really old school player. So is it Dick Night Train Lane?
No, he's actually second, and that's why I thought of that.
Not like Steve Wilson, is it?
No, he's a Minnesota Viking.
I'm not going to get this one.
Well, before we were born.
Nah, I'm not going to get it.
Paul Krause, 81 interceptions, the Minnesota Vikings.
I don't even know that name. I'm going to have to learn it, though.
Better recognize Paul Krause. Respect. Put some respect on his name. Yes. One of the most unbreakable records, although Trayvon Diggs is hunting.
He'll give him a run for his money.
7-6 the first 6 games.
In the interest of the fact that I am desperately hungry, I'm going to jump right into my statement of the week.
Go for it.
Congratulations to the hometown team, the Chicago Sky, winners of their first WNBA title in franchise history. Candace Parker with a soft parentheses on, or a soft quotes on the homecoming, given that she grew up in Naperville. Courtney Vandersloot being an incredible point guard for the Sky. Kaylee Copper, the finals MVP, and of course, also a big year for Stephanie Dolson, who also won gold for the women's 3-on-3 team at the Olympics. So
don't forget about Allie Quigley.
Of course, Allie Quigley. Yeah. Absolutely. So salute to the Sky. They had their parade here in Chicago today, complete with the door that Diana Taurasi allegedly broke after the Mercury lost. So expert trolling on the Chicago Sky's part. They are having no shortage of fun with their WNBA title, so hats off to them.
I had the exact same thing written down. I have it as a salute. I have a separate statement. I'll give my salute, then I'll go to Drew, then I'll do my statement. So my salute is also the Chicago Sky and Candace Parker. She was voted the most overrated player in the WNBA by her peers recently. The Naperville Central High School star. I've interviewed her old high school coach. I know him. He is basically a more crazy version of me, but old. Picture that. He is a crazy guy in a good way. Really fun personality. She helped the Sky to their first WNBA championship as a 6 seed. A 6 seed. A 6 seed. Let that sink in. In the WNBA, there's 14 teams in the whole league. They're basically a middle of the pack team in the regular season. And I know the Mercury had some injuries. They had the gold medal game. So, Taurasi and Griner weren't there the whole season. So they were actually a 5 seed themselves. It was a 5 versus 6 in the WNBA finals. The Sky went through the WNBA playoffs. The road team beat everybody. And what they had was one of the most incredible things in that they didn't have a single true superstar on their team. Candace Parker is past her prime. She wasn't even the leading scorer on that team. Kayla Copper, Courtney Vandersloot, Allie Quigley, Candace Parker, 4 players who are very good players, no superstars. They basically Detroit Pistoned back in the day with Richard Hamilton, Chauncey Billups, Rasheed, and Ben Wallace. Really, really impressive run. Mercury had the superstar power. They had Brittany Griner, Diana Taurasi, 2 of the all-time greatest players in the history of the game. Taurasi, probably the best player ever. She is past her prime, but still very good. Griner might be the best player right now. And they took down the Mercury. Salute to the Chicago Sky. Drew, what you got?
I echo your salute. Also, Ben Wallace was the star of that team. Otherwise, I got nothing.
Hall of Famer Ben Wallace.
Hall of Famer Ben Wallace.
Respect on his name.
That's right. You guys remember the random person on YouTube who commented on our video that we posted disagreeing with me that Ben Wallace is absolutely a Hall of Famer.
Ben Wallace's burner account. Yeah, of course.
It was probably Drew Brackett from a burner account. That's probably what it was.
No, Drew would say it straight up.
Yeah. Drew has a burner Twitter account, Tom. You knew that, right?
I think I've heard rumor of it.
Who doesn't have a burner?
I don't have a burner account. I don't have one.
I'm just a lurker.
So statement of the week. The 76ers must move on from Ben Simmons. It is time to go. Doc Rivers reportedly kicking him out of practice today and suspending him for the opener or maybe this was yesterday that he kicked him out. The news breaking today, suspending him for the opener because he was detrimental to the team, not locked in. He didn't want to be there in the offseason. They tried to trade him. Nobody wanted him with this contract. Rivers didn't want him there after the playoff loss. The media asked him a question, can you be a championship team with Ben Simmons as your point guard? He said, I don't know. That was a very honest response. I felt like in the moment, maybe not the right response, but the truth. Joel Embiid, Danny Green, several of his teammates questioned him in the offseason. He doesn't even have the confidence to go for easy layups. It's one thing when you're not a shooter, and he knows that, but he needs to show a little bit of confidence and going for some easy layups. He's not quite the athlete Giannis is, a little bit different player, but I mean, Giannis dominates the NBA without being a great shooter. Like Simmons needs to have some type of internal confidence because I think if he does that, he can still be a very good player, but it's obvious that in Philly, the chemistry isn't there. It's time for them to move on from him and him to move on from them. I think he could be a good player if he's your number 3 guy, but the Sixers are expecting him to be number 2, bona fide superstar. He's not the number 2 guy if you want to win a championship. Ben Simmons should go. Maybe do that trade for Kyrie Irving, like you said, Tom. Mm-hmm. Who knows? But that's my statement. For both their sakes, Ben Simmons needs to be out of Philly. And for the record, I don't want him in Chicago. I've heard those rumors. At this point, I'd rather have Lonzo Ball because we got all these other all-stars that won't be distractions. So that's it. That's it for the day. Anything else you guys want to add?
No, if we have Lonzo Ball in Chicago, maybe he can lure LaMelo as a form a super team.
Maybe. And then we'll get LiAngelo to sit on the bench. Then we'll have to put up with LeVar, though, although they seem like they've distanced themselves from Lamar. LiAngelo's like, here you go. Have some water, Zach LaVine. I love it. All right, well, I'm going to go watch the NBA opener right now. Nets and Bucks going on. So that'll be fun. Lakers, Warriors to follow after. Have a good one, guys, and everyone have a good day.